Hello everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's that time of year again where we're kind of in that dead zone where things are like happening and not happening all at once. So, having written 3 first drafts for a series in the last year alone, I figured it was time to talk about one of the things that is the hardest thing for any writer to do ever. And no, I'm not talking about editing. I am talking about titling your novel or your short story or your poem, whatever. But specifically, I'm talking about how to title a novel today. Although these tips can be used to help you in your quest to title anything else that you've written creatively. So let's begin, shall we? So there are a few different main types of titles. There are character-driven titles, there are theme-driven titles, there are world-driven titles, and I just want to jump right in. So, first up, I have, as you can tell on my bookshelf, things are missing, because I have a bunch of books that I'm ready to use as examples of this titling thing. So, first we're going to start with This Present Darkness. This is a book by Frank Peretti. One of the first books that he wrote that really just took everybody by storm. Still praised today as one of the most well-written Christian fiction books out there. So, this book is about the battles of good and evil, specifically the battles between angels and demons, happening in a small town called Ashton. Yep, small town called Ashton. And this book, it's unique and interesting because you have all of the different forces going on. One of the major forces is the infiltration of the demonic forces into Ashton, the town, right? And there's also this quote from the Bible, from Ephesians 6:12. For we are not contending against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the rulers of this present darkness. And that Bible verse actually sums up the plot of this book really well. So it makes perfect sense that as a Christian fiction novel, they would use that quote in the title. It just makes really good sense. But it also just gives you an idea of the kind of setting you'll be entering into. And it just gives you an idea of what is going to happen in the book. So, that's option 1, using a quote, whether from the book or something else that inspired the book, as part of the title. The next book I want to talk about is in a similar vein of titling, and it is The Hunger Games. Every book in this series was titled a different way. This one was titled off of the initial event that started it all for these characters, and also a major part of the culture. The Hunger Games impacts every aspect of everyone's life in Panem. It impacts whether they get to eat. It impacts how they raise their children. It impacts life from the capital to all of the districts, whether you're training, whether you're just like, oh, I can just enjoy watching this, whether you're using it as a survival tactic, as they do in District 12. The Hunger Games impacts every aspect of their life, so looking at that as the title of this book made perfect sense. Even if confusing for people who have not yet read the books and don't know what the Hunger Games are. For example, the first time I heard this title, I was like, is it like a game show where people are hungry? Like, I don't know. But after reading the books, you get it. You understand what's going on. Or I guess at this point, watching the movies, you understand what is meant by the Hunger Games. And it's a unique title. You don't really know what to expect. Now you do, because it was a phenomenon. Most people know what the Hunger Games are as you talk about them. But prior to this book taking off the way that it did, it was not a household name, and people didn't know what it was. So it was unique. But now it carries and connotes the context of death games and fights to the death and gladiator arenas, essentially, for entertainment purposes. So, anyway, good example of a title based off of the setting and the culture of the book itself. It's catchy, it's short, it makes sense once you've read the book, and it's intriguing before you've read the book. The other 2 books in that series, like I said, they were titled differently. Catching Fire is talking about the cultural phenomenon of Katniss and sparking a revolution, which is literally the spark to light the fire, to set the flame to everything that they know and love, right? So Catching Fire is talking about one of the major themes in that book, behind the storyline. And then Mockingjay that's a major symbolic element that comes through every single book. So it makes perfect sense that as the end of the series, that would come back in the title. So those are 2 other ways that you can title your books. Similar to Mockingjay, we have Divergent, in the fact that it is a thematic element. It's extremely important for the people in the book. So it's sort of a cultural thing, sort of a thematic element all the way through the series. But being divergent in this world is such a unique thing that it also, again, makes sense to have that as the title of this book. Anyway, so it's another thematic way to approach doing books and titling books and thinking about titles. So as you go about trying to title your book or your short story or your poem, think about the thematic elements, the symbolic elements that could make a good 1 or 2 word title if you so desire that sort of title. Next up, I have 3 of my favorite books. I haven't read all of them, which hurts me to say, but I got the 3rd one for Christmas from a Secret Santa, and then later that Christmas I got both of the other, like the 1st and the 2nd one from my sister, and then read the first 2 during Christmas break, left the 3rd one home because there was no way I was going to finish it, and still haven't finished the series. Now I need to go back and reread all of them so that I can read the 3rd one, but that's beyond the point. We're talking about titles today, and these books do titling in a way that is just super unique. I've never seen this done before. I'm sure it has been done before, but I've never seen it before. And honestly, it's goals. So we have Darkest Minds trilogy, and if you put all of the titles together, you get a sentence. So Darkest Minds Never Fade, and the last book is In the Afterlight. So on the shelf together, they literally make a sentence. And that's just so unique, and I love that as a way to do the series. I don't know how they came up with that. I love the concept of the psychic sort of powers in the Darkest Minds, and I look forward to seeing how the other titles affect the story. Anyway, that's just a really cool way to title a series, and I aspire to that level of smartness, which is not a word, but brilliance, I guess. Anyway, cool titles. If you can come up with a way to split a sentence into 3 successful book titles, let me know how you did that, because I'm very interested. And lastly, our last way of titling things, titling books in particular, are through the main characters. So there are a few different ways to do that. There is the typical Harry Potter example, or the Percy Jackson example would work the same way. And a lot of that has to do with age group that you're aiming for. But something like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you are, that gives you both a main plot element, so like the main goal of the book, and also the main character. It makes it feel fun and lighthearted. It gives you the effect of I'm going on an adventure with Harry Potter, which is a super cool way to do that. It gives you a lot of information in a very limited amount of space. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, don't be afraid to do that. I think we need more books like this because it's so straightforward. It creates a series that people can refer to really easily, like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. And just having it be so straightforward and easy to remember really does wonders for getting your name out there and getting the books out there and all of that fun stuff. And then the last 2, and if you've been around here a while, you've seen these books before, but two of my most favorite books ever, both by the same author, both titled in a very similar way. We have Sinner and we have Drift. And both of these are named after the main protagonist. Sinner, there is literally a character in here referred to as the Sinner. Like, that's just what he calls himself. He's essentially an immortal. He doesn't remember who he was beforehand. He just knows that he's been around for a very long time. And as far as he's concerned, he is the worst sinner of them all. So, anyway, again, makes sense that it's titled after him. Could be titled after any of the other characters as well, but as the main driving force of the plot, it makes sense for him to be the center of attention on the cover. We also get one of his symbols in the cover art, which I love. Like, looking at this book initially, it's kind of creepy. Whoever did the cover art was really unique and really skilled to get the S in the background so subtly. And if you look even closer, you can see the S and the cross through the S. Regardless, that's one of the Sinner's symbols, and that's just really cool. I don't know what I expected. Did not expect the book I got when I read this book. But I also binged this book in 10 hours in a road trip through Texas. So take that how you will. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I will tell everyone forever to read this book, always. But, again, looking at titles, one word, it doesn't have to be the character's name. In this case, it is. But you can do that a number of ways. Frankenstein is one of the main character's names in Frankenstein, not in Sinner. But stuff like that. Like, it's an easy way to do that if you have a character that's unique enough or a character name that's unique enough that you think that would be a good standalone title. This is the last one I'm going to cover today. It's Drift. On here, there we go, on the back, found it. It says, "I am not an angel, nor am I a demon. I am not a ghost, as someone like to believe. I am a drifter, something God created in his spare time and then forgot on the fringes of reality." If that doesn't make you want to read this book, I don't know what will. Especially given the quote on the front as well. "Lost thing never finds itself, and found things sometimes were never lost at all." And both of those quotes have a ton to do with the actual plot of this novel. But this novel, I've reread this book at least 4 times. It's so good. But anyway, so he's a drifter. His name changes depending on who his tether is. All of that makes sense when you read the book. So the only thing you really have to work off of is his species, sort of. So calling it drift rather than calling it drifter is a really unique way to still tie into his species and the story and everything about the themes without having to be straightforward. This is his name, because, like I said, his name changes depending on his tether, which is, again, makes sense when you read the book. Anyway, go read this book and Sinner, and literally every book that I mentioned today. They're some of my favorite books. But if you're struggling with ways to title your book, that's a good way to do it. Granted, you only need your title to be effective at catching the editor at the publishing house. Likely, they have creative teams whose job it is to title books well. If they like your title, then it probably won't change. But if, as happened to one of my other friends, she wrote Blaze, which is actually over there right now, but she wrote Blaze, and in all of her initial thinking about it, she had been calling it Den. And then her publisher was like, "Do we actually get to the part where there's a den involved?" And she was like, "Oh, no, that's book 2. And they were like, "Great, let's put Den as the title of book 2 and instead call this one something else." So sometimes publishers will think things through differently than you will, and they'll probably change the title of your book. That's just the way it is if you traditionally publish. Usually that'll be a very helpful aspect. It'll help the book sell. It's designed to make the book more appealing to its target audience. But if you're self-publishing or whatever, and like you can't just submit my WIP, that still needs to be named. And yes, I say WIP, not WIP. It just takes so much less time, and the way that I function, anything that I can do that's faster or more efficient, I do. So get over it. So this is my work in progress, unnamed. Like, you can't submit that to agents or editors. We're not gonna, if we even read the book in the first place, if we read the submission as unnamed or untitled, it's your first impression, okay? The first impression you want to give to an agent or an editor is not, I don't know what I'm doing. So even if it's a title that you don't like, that's okay. Just give it a title, you know? The editor and the publishing house will change the title probably, especially if you're like, I don't like this title, I need help, but I needed something to use for now to keep it straight in my mind. That's great. They're probably going to be like, oh, great, so here are our suggestions, and you'll be fine. Just don't get, if you do love your title, don't get too clingy to it, because again, they're going to change it. So keep that in mind as you go about all of your writing adventures, and I will see you next week. Have a happy new year. Until next time, I'll see you then. If you like these videos, like and subscribe. If you want to learn more about the publishing world and you want to know everything as it's happening about my writing journey, the things that are going on, where I'm going to be at writers' conferences, click the notifications bell, because then you'll know when things happen, and who doesn't like to be in the know, right? So stay in the know, hit the notifications bell, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, drop a like. I want to connect with you, so let's make it easy on ourselves, right? Also, if you're interested, you can go join my Patreon team. There's a link down below and also across the screen here. But for as low as $3 a month, you can join me in my journey and get a free short story every month, and just continue getting to know me as we go through this life together. Thank you very much. I hope your 2019 was wonderful. As we go into 2020, I am looking forward to all sorts of really exciting things. Best of luck to you. Thank you, and goodbye.